Welcome back, punters, to the Punters Academy. We're doing the review show of Stradbroke Day here with John Walter from racingwatch.com.au. G'day, John.
G'day, mate. Yeah, it was a good day's racing, huh? It was pretty fair, you thought? I think we both agreed the track was pretty fair, which is good fun to have.
Track played pretty well. I don't think there was any real disadvantage to sit wide on the day. Certainly not saying it's an advantage, but certainly no disadvantage. There was plenty of horses that outperformed their expectations significantly by sitting wide on the day. But in terms of position, haven't got lanes data yet, but it seemed to play pretty fair. And in terms of position, in terms of where you could come from and perform on the day, it was very fair. So got to be happy with what we're getting out of Eagle Farm at the moment.
Absolutely. Like, considering the rain, and you even look at, say, the Gold Coast on Saturday, they probably get a bit more racing than Eagle Farm, but it looks like chewed up, and we've had perfect weather here for 2 weeks and it was still pretty ugly there. So it's pretty hard to knock Eagle Farm by any measure.
Indeed. Okay, let's get right into it. So the Oxlade Stakes, race 1, John, over 1,300 metres, solid tempo. By the time they got to the 600, it was probably above average, but certainly every runner had their chance in terms of pace. What do you say about this race?
Yeah, well, the winner was coming off a debut. I think it was over 1,000 on the cushion track, which is pretty tough to sort of line that up. I think it was a maiden on the cushion to 1,200 or 1,300 here. Was it 1,300? So hard to line it up, but it looks like all merit to it. It's controlled the race, gone quick, run looks like solid overall time, and everything's had its chance. I know we kind of both found the horse. I think I saw you mention Bank more prior to the race, and I think it's probably the one, Complete Forgive. He just looks like he's a bit of a lazy, raw type that got stuck 3 wide here, and whether he needs blinkers and a little bit further, I'm not sure, but he gets beaten a fair way here. But he's the only horse that I'm interested in following out of this race with much passion going forward. The winner has certainly got huge upside, and I just couldn't find anything behind them that had excuses to say that it probably should have finished closer or was worth following.
Yeah, well, cushion form, to turf is always going to be problematic in terms of knowing whether the horse can do it. I mean, lightly raced horse, I suppose, no reason why not. I mean, my price on the winner was about 30 to 1, so slightly above market. I thought Metallicity's run was pretty good there last 200 after being held up. In terms of it seemed like a nice run out of the race. It's run the 5th best last 200, just based off some provisional times there in terms of sectional rating, not actual time necessarily. But look, it was a decent performance, but I'm not getting carried away with these.
No, and it's one of those things at the moment that's just a bit unique to the way the weather's been sort of all up the East Coast, isn't it? That you've got cushion meetings, feeding group meetings. It's not normal, and good luck to those who found the winner. I went back and watched his replay. He was nice and strong, and he did a good job over 1,000. But it's just impossible to come up with a performance like that, jumping to 1,300 on the turf. But definitely couldn't poke holes in his effort.
Indeed. Okay, let's shoot on the race 2 to Wayne Wilson over a mile at weight for age. We've got an average tempo here, and God bless the winner, Charmer Baby. I was worried that Craig Williams was going to get held in that pocket and not get out until it was too late, but he managed to extricate it, which was a good job. And those charging home, Kubrick and Kerwin's Lane. Kerwin's Lane probably got a bit too far back out of its ground, but I don't know what you're going to get other than that on the map. Interestingly, the winner, who's with Laurie Mayfield Smith at the moment, has had 2 previous runs before the 2 runs this prep with Laurie Mayfield Smith and rated significantly higher. And that's sort of what I was assessing it on. I was sort of saying, well, okay, this second up run here at Eagle Farm last start, I'm going to give it some improvement towards those numbers towards the end of last prep out of the same stable. And that put the horse quite short on my market. I had it about 9 to 4, so it was a good result. And prior to that, Bob Milligan had the horse and never got within about 2 lengths of what the form has been for that horse, or the figures have been for that horse since he's been with Laurie Mayfield Smith. So obviously they know the key to it. Kubrick, what do you say about it, John? I mean, it's the old Kubrick.
Yeah, I probably thought the whole the whole race was here. Kind of, I know a lot of people. Bullfinch is obviously an excuse for what it does, but yeah, I love this overhead shot. Like if we could get this for all the races in Australia or just New South Wales, it'd do me. I'd be over the moon because you really get to see what happens early in the race. And this is your horse, Charm Me Baby, who's clearly second last early. And if you don't have to go too far, see where Craig Williams ends up, like he hasn't had to spend too much energy and he's ended up box seating. Whereas, as you said, like Kerwin's Lane ended up well back, Kubrick, and Craig Williams is probably near won the race here. Like the horse has got a little bit keen, but finding that spot, and then I couldn't find too many excuses. These horses are, I call them take turns horses. There's not much between them. They're not got too much upside, and I think like what you've done is probably, the best thing you can do in these races. Try and run a narrative. If you can find an edge on your price to the market price, that's about all you can do because best horse. There's not much between them, and try and find the right horse. You've found it in this occasion, and great ride, got the job done. I can't find any, like even Kerwin's Lane, like he's had his chance. They've not done anything special late in this race, or look at him. He's not charging through the line. I'm not, I don't. They go another 100 metres. I'm still not sure there would have been
last 400, last 200 below standard. So nothing flash there. I suppose we'll move on to the Brisbane Cup now, John. Solid tempo then.
A much better race to go on to, the Brisbane Cup. Yeah, it's beautiful.
Couldn't quite get there through Irish Eyes, but I managed to sort of half chop out on the winner, but I was sort of querying its ability at the 2 miles, a bit uncertain and had penalised it as a result of that, but still, I suppose on prices I had to sort of at least half save on it. Didn't like Splendiferous. It sort of knocked up pretty quick after sort of kicking about 3 in front on the turn, I think it was. And what else? Sweet Thomas did its thing. What do you want to say about this race, John?
No, all I noted was that the winner, 1, 2, 3 are all back here following each other. They've obviously gone along a little bit quick. Splendiferous probably looked the winner on the bend. If you held a ticket on it, you were getting a bit excited, but I was a bit like you, thought it was highly dubious at the trip, and she got a big stitch, and I could not really, there was 2 horses that sat wide, the Fearless one and is it Traduce or something? And there was a weird early move. It was $1 million to 1 anyway, but I don't know why it took off halfway through the race and decided to put pressure on and make it a harder task for itself, and it killed its chances. But the 1, 2, 3 across the line are all came together from a backward position, all sat off the fast tempo, had every chance. And I don't know what you do with this form. It says it's a Group 2, but what is it? I don't really know. Where does this form travel to? I don't know. I'm just glad that these horses that was their grand final. We don't have to see them for a while again.
Yeah, King of Leogrand suffered a off-forward tendon injury, so maybe an excuse there. And Balmaurice has to be scoped for the stewards' satisfaction before it runs again. But I think you're right. I mean, these where do they go to from here?
Yeah, there's just not much between them. There's just in this race, and if you've got a result, congratulations. All I've got.
Indeed. I thought the performance of the next winner was pretty good. Kiss Some here, John. They've gone out. This is the Gunsynd Classic over a mile for 3-year-olds at set weights. Gone out above average tempo. Average probably by the time they got to the 600, but the closing speed here of the winner, it ran the best last 400 and 200 sectional ratings on the day. It's done a good job, I thought.
Got it flying. I was actually surprised that a lot of people said it was a good ride last start, and I thought it was desperately unlucky and should have won clearly. And this is what this horse can do when it's pulled to the middle and given time to go through its gears. I was a little bit worried about the trip for it potentially, and they obviously haven't gone along too quick here, so I thought that may be against it as well, because there was some, a horse like Battleton's pretty tough and hard to get past, but it's just been dominant. And I actually honestly think it would have run well in the Stradbroke, even though it's sort of rated really high. I think the profile of this horse would have run well there, and they've got a result in this race, and highly deserved. Nothing I could find behind it. Battleton just sort of needs to dominate a race. It's a horse that doesn't look like it can win from anywhere off speed, and Lock Eagle seems to be going really well. I'm not sure what this new tactics are to ride it back cold in the field, but it's going okay.
Flying Crazy finished the race off well. It ran the third best last 200, but I mean, I suppose it's going to do that off that setup. And haven't really been happy with Kieran as a rider of late, but anyway, we still back him when he presents on the right horse. Kiss Sambo, interesting. I think its best form is on the dry surfaces. Its two best figures now, including that run on Saturday, which looks to be a new peak or slight peak, have come off good tracks, and it was obviously able to do what it did sectionally as well as a result of that, I think. So where to from here, I'm not sure what the plans are for the stable, but well done to Tracy Bartlett.
There can't be much left, but it's a nice horse, and he's one of those trainers that when he gets in form, he can win any race in the country. He's a very good trainer. He can get 2-year-olds going. He's just a very, very good trainer. I think he could have been much more successful if he had have chosen to be, a city trainer. And I definitely don't mind finding his horses.
Indeed. Okay, let's move on to the Hinkler Handicap. This is a 6 furlongs quality listed race. They've gone out fast here, John, and set the race up for Rangers. A little bit of support around it. I saved on it. I backed Tycoonus as well in the race. Ranch Hand, had every chance, didn't it? I mean, I know it, it was probably held up a little bit late, in the last 100 metres, but that wouldn't have made much difference. Maximal was definitely, are we on the right race? No, we're not on the right race yet. We're going too far here.
This is Southern Lad.
Yeah, yep. Simply Fly. It's done a decent enough effort, I suppose. But interestingly, it did peak 4th up last prep as well. So maybe that's just when the horse produces close to its best. But it's a hard horse to catch and hasn't really won, I don't think, since its 3-year-old campaign there. When was that? Back in February, March of 21. So it's been a while between drinks for it.
I call this horse honest but limited. And when he gets the right running, he does the same thing every time, but he's not. This is his grade, and I thought this was probably as good a win as I've seen from Rangers. Like, he's definitely got there nice and early, had to sort of cart a few up, and these horses have definitely had their chance to get past him. So he's done a good job, but what would I want to back out of the horses behind him? Nothing with conviction. I thought Mass Destruction was probably flattered down the outside by the tempo and looks like it was nice and flat on the line. I don't think it was going to go past them. Southern Lad, every chance. They all had their chance for mine.
Well, I mean, it's almost as good as Rangers can go, I think that. So
agree. It's not. It was. It's just. It's a bread and butter horse, isn't it? Like it's got a bit of speed. It can quicken a little bit, and it can sort of hold that, but it needs to be very well placed. And it's obviously, you very rarely find it. Like, it doesn't surprise me that you found Tycoonus and sort of saved on it, because it's very rarely a horse that stands out, but it's a very consistent horse.
Londo, I mean, it ran on well enough, I suppose. It's run the best race closing sectionals, sectional ratings, I should say. And what do you say about it?
It's a bit of a fresh horse that needs things to go its way. It's a bit of an enigma, and its racing pattern is its biggest inhibitor. What did you think of Tycoonus? It was probably it was unlucky there last week, wasn't it? So
yeah, a bit disappointing.
Yeah, it's a little bit the same. It raced well fresh, and it's gone off a bit. I don't know.
Well, that fresh went off a slow track on my figures here. I don't even look at the official track, so maybe it was flooded last time.
Yeah,
maybe it's just.
I think that's a bit of a nothing race. Those horses will keep going around against similar opposition, and there's nothing out of that race that I want to find.
No.
I'd rather be negative about those horses than positive.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on to the PJ O'Shea over 11 furlong. New Marion got away here, barrier to box, got the job done at big odds, and held off a few horses. Maximal was a horse I mentioned a minute ago. Got the right race now. It was held up pretty badly, and but I think it might have been dying or just peaking on its run late. Hueto didn't sort of run up to expectations, I suppose, and didn't firm as some of you good judges thought it might, but
I didn't think it had firm. I thought it was short enough, but I just well, it's patternless.
Little bit easier.
What happens here? Have you seen like this? I actually didn't get that excited about the race, but geez, there was some carnage. I'm assuming this is the race McDonald or someone.
Yeah. That was London Banker involved in all that.
Bang! Look at that! Bang! Bang!
Coventina Bay, Criderius, all those horses involved there.
How good's the angle? It's awesome. You just get to see what it does to everything. It drives you mad because you could probably spend 20 minutes trying to work out what it's done to every horse. And it's that big a nothing race, and nothing really does anything at the end of it that I didn't bother too much with it. But it's Weta was certainly disappointing, even with the slow tempo. The winner got handed the Gosford Cup last start, and I kind of certainly didn't find it here. I didn't really like the race that much, but it's actually put in a better performance for mine here than it did at Gosford, and I couldn't really.
Yeah, well, you're right there, John. Just on provisional figures, I'd say it's gone about a length better, or length and a bit better maybe than what it did at Gosford. I'm just having a look at where I had the horse in my market. They're too clever there. I have it about 16s. Didn't back it.
It's gone around about that. Is it like 20 to 1 or something?
$28 on the fair. About $24, $25 on the tote. So no, I didn't back it. I had something very small on Great House. Hopeful got out to odds which I thought were decent enough.
It was the horse I thought was interesting. It's outside the leader, right?
The yellow colours, yeah.
Yeah. So it's had its chance on an even tempo.
Yeah. Not much to say here, I don't think.
No, and again, this is pretty much a grand final for most of these horses, I would imagine. I do think this horse has got ability. There's no doubt, Weta, but maybe I'm not sure. Maybe it needs a bit of the sting out or something. I'm not sure, but it wasn't as if it was wet last start.
No, it was a good track last time. I mean, good to dead anyway in that range.
Maybe forgiving because it's the first time it hasn't hit the line in its career since it's been out here. So maybe something went wrong.
Had an off day. I mean, pace shape was similar to last time, so I think you're entitled to forgive it.
Hopeful sort of drops out there. It's just look at them all. Pack chasers. Does a good job. Yeah, I don't think it's a race worth going too much more detail.
No, Maxwell's done a pretty good job, I suppose. But
the market loves that horse.
Yes. Okay. Let's move on to the JJ Atkins over 8 furlongs or a mile, I should say.
If we watch this enough times, will Smart and Sexy win it, or whatever it's called? But she's smart and sharp. If we keep watching it over and over, will it eventually win?
Oh, look, I mean, I'm talking from a kick, but I think it was a little bit unlucky, but probably wouldn't have made a difference, I don't think. I mean, it might have won.
Yeah, he's a bit stiff. Like he jumps really well there and looks like he's going to hold a spot. And she's a belter outside it, right? So this is sharp and smart here. This is she's a belter somehow, and it does sit a little bit wide, I think. Somehow, sort of Pike ends up in front of it and gets to the right part of the track and gets momentum and clear room, which Bowman never gets. So I think
Pike's right. Yeah, he outrode him, Pike. I mean, it was a great ride.
Swap the run, swap the win, swap the result. I agree with that because I think this horse desperately needed to get to the outside and get clean air and wind up, and it just doesn't get its opportunity to do that. I definitely think it's the best horse going forward.
I mean, if you look at there's what, a couple of links separating about 6 or 7 of these, and a number of them race wide throughout. Like She's a Belter. Leaving forwards.
And I laugh when people tell me that Political Debate was a certainty beaten because it was the most flattered horse in the race by so far. It's got no early speed. It can't go. They've gone 100 miles an hour. It's got the best run through you've ever seen. And whilst it obviously looks like it's attacking the line, they're going in reverse. I'll have Sharp and Smart, and they can have Political Debate for the rest of their careers.
Okay, let's talk about the story of the day. This is a tremendous outcome here for Connections. Alligator Blood getting the job done in the Stradbroke Handicap at Wait for Age. They've gone fast here, and obviously everyone will talk about the run of Private Eye, and it should have won the race. I think no doubt whatsoever. but you can't take away from connections here. It's just a tremendous story, and good for your mate, Tim.
Yeah, it was. You know, the poor fella's wife passed the day later, so there was. But in saying that, obviously it was expected, and she wasn't in a good state anyway. And hopefully this gave her a bit of a lift before, which is terrible. But absolutely. And what a training performance. You know, whether that guy's a bit of a lunatic or not is irrelevant. Just great for Australian racing. The horse is back. He's a very good horse, and it's just good to see him back and at his best. And I agree with you that Private Eye should have won. There's no doubt, but it was probably the third best run in the race. The leader has probably arguably the run of the race, and if not, Alligator Blood's gone huge. So what I thought was an ordinary Stradbroke turned out to be quite a good one, and I think they'll all find races in the spring that they can be very competitive in.
Look, I mean, figures-wise, it's probably down a bit on what you might expect. There's been better Stradbrokes. I mean, we all know that. But look, you can only beat what you got. And look, done a tremendous job, the winner. It's a great story. I mean, I was very, very happy to see that win, even though I didn't back it. For me, it was a very small betting race. I was backing roughies mainly and having fairly small bets. Brooklyn Hustle did a tremendous job. I mean, this horse, the market loves it, but it did reel off the clear best last 200 sectional rating of the race, and seventh best on the day. So, you know, it's Ayrton. What do you say about Ayrton? Do we make any excuse for it?
There was a few weird ones. Obviously, the money for Law of Indices was just insanity, but like it just was endless. I'm not saying it was insanity. Someone obviously had an angle, but Wyatt was ridden up on speed in what looked a fast run race. I thought was very strange. What do you do with it? I don't know. The horse, I think it's a much better horse than it's shown this prep. Ayrton was pretty much wide, no cover the whole way. I think we all kind of agreed that it was extremely short.
Well, tricky horse to assess, I think, is what we were really saying before the race. It was, what do you do? What do you do with it? I mean, obviously, you forgot forgive the last run, lame, but 35 days off. Is that the ideal prep? You know, 1800 back to 1400.
Into a hard
trialled in. Look, I know it trialled in between on the cushion, but still, it was a price thing for me. I wasn't writing it off as a chance. It was just that I felt it was under the odds at the time. The big unders for me in the race was 11-11. That's the one I couldn't get my head around.
Yeah, it was missing a zero. That was just weird because it was never going to run a strong sort of 1400 hour, I didn't think, and even class. It was just crazy. But that was probably what put me off the race and actually ended up steering me into Alligator Blood and Private Eye because I just thought they were a much classier version of 11-11. So it was a bit lucky. But Valana was wide, no cover. I would be forgiving her for the entire race. Very tough for a 3-year-old filly to do that and run well. As you said, starts on Brooklyn Husson, sat back and ran on off the fast tempo.
3-year-old colt, John?
3-year-old filly. Is it?
Colt?
Is it Valana a filly? 50.5? I don't know. I could be wrong.
I think you'll find it's got a pair.
Well, you can always change that, and this day, shape, and form. It just means nothing, does it? It's only about an hour operation. The talking point's probably poor Abdallah. Like he's copped a lot of abuse for it, and I'm not going to jump on the bandwagon. But he was very unlucky. Sort of looks like he's edging for that inside run there. It closes for 50 metres, and then he commits to the outside, and he's just unlucky that runs appear everywhere back where he was. He's losing all his momentum trying to push through this gap, and that's cost him the race. But that happens every day of the week. Just unfortunate that it was on the big stage this time for Brenton. Yeah. But I keep saying it. He is the most underrated trainer in the country. For mine.
Joseph Pride.
Oh,
great trainer.
So good. So good. Just so when you analyse the way he places horses and doesn't, I'm not saying they're not trying to win all the time, but he certainly targets different types at different stages of their preparation. And when the stable's confident and come grand final day, where he's done it with Eduardo and cast off horses and, so many distance ranges, he's just a great trainer.
Indeed. Okay, lucky last, Dane Ripper over 1300s at set weights and penalties, fillies and mares. And they've gone out fast here again. and by the time they got to 600, definitely solid tempo still.
You knew this was going to happen when none of us could say this stupid horse's name, wouldn't you? Like when we were talking about it, and none of us could say this Palasapan or whatever it was. You knew it was going to come out and win.
Well, I did put it in numbers of a bunch of horses. I mean, I'm not claiming it, but it was something that I ended up throwing something small, and it was just a price thing. I didn't like the favourite price, and I didn't really want to bet against the favourite, but I thought, I'll throw a few hundred on the winner and see what happens. It's turned out quite well, and it's not really a surprise result when you go back through the form and have a look at it. But I think I was surprised that it was the price that it was, around 25 to 1 the totes. So
pretty dominant win.
Anyway,
it gets a soft run, but it definitely it puts them away.
Yeah, you can't knock it. Najmati, John, what do you say about it?
Yeah, I don't really know. Obviously got a little bit of a squeeze, or it's slow at the start. But from this point here, which is a perfect time to pick it up, it certainly works into the race really comfortably. And considering the sort of sprint that it sustained last time, you'd have to say that it was highly disappointing. It has to bullock a little bit, but it's out here. The horse on the inside, it might be a half length in front. It certainly runs away from it, and it just sort of continues to grind. So maybe it's a bit of a fresh horse, sort of first and second up, and maybe looking for further. I'm not sure, but had its chance.
Well, it's two previous third up runs in terms of ratings. It's obviously rated down. One of those that pulled up with poor recovery, started 15 to 8 favourite, and another one they're saying that the track was too wet. And I'm saying it was sort of like a dead track that day. But there's no doubt that this horse performs on the dry. So I suppose in 11 to 8, that sort of run style big field, it's a risk, isn't it?
100%. I thought Bring the Ransom was a complete forgive. It was the horse I sort of found in the race. So I went back to look at it. It goes from this position to out here to back and runs on a little bit. It's not a horse I want to follow with conviction, but just to forgive. The horse I do want to find when it can dictate a race, and that's the key to this horse is Volpine. I think it's going much better than maybe its form suggests. It did win early in its prep, but it's just in here in the green and whacks away. It's not a horse that can sit off and sprint usually, but I think it's going extra well. And if it can control the race, it'll take beating. Let's Be Glam's a horse that I'm in love with. I'm certain it needs wide draws and 1,000 to 1,100 metres absolute maximum.
Well, it did blouse them first up at Scone.
Which was weird, right?
It was just a moderate pace. But, the track, the inside that day was no good.
Smelly, that's right.
It was definitely sort of in a much better, it was like the last 200 metres through the line, it was in about 8 wide or something in the straight. And that was about the best spot that you could be. So, and they can do that first up, right? They can blouse first up. So, yeah, but that was a bit of an aberration to what you're saying is its standard pattern, which is
and that's kind of a good thing to me. So a horse that's done that, it shows that it's going really well, because I don't think that's its forte. I think it's just sort of its last couple of runs, things haven't fallen its way. It hasn't been that well placed. So if it finds the right race, it can win. Anything to follow?
It's hard for me, John, on this meeting. I can't really put my finger on anything that I want to sort of label. But
sort of that part of the carnival, isn't it, where most of them are grand final, so it's not as if you're looking for...
We're in that tail end.
I think that Bank Moore horse in the first race is worth following, because it's going to be big odds pretty much wherever it goes next start, and it can improve, especially if they put blinkers on it. I've not got too much else that I want to find. Maybe Volpine in the last. That's about it for me.
Fair enough. I'll stay out of the forces to follow this week.
Too easy.
Let's get on to the questions.
Some solid questions. There's some solid reading for you coming up. There's some long questions.
Indeed. The first one's from Weapon of Choice. I got to get this guy's name. I'm not going to keep corresponding with people I don't know who I'm talking to.
Especially Weapon of Choice.
Indeed. Anyway, so firstly, he thanked us for the answers last week. He said, plethora of gold, really appreciated. He said, could I share some of the reasons as to why I was able to dismiss Dalalat from your calculations at Randwick on Saturday? Don't specifically care that you marked at triple figures, but just some of the factors that led you to mark at a big price. Is it all map related, or is there a point where you just simply dismiss old form entirely? Look, I'll just bring that race up. Hang on. I do seem to remember its figures were just really poor. Its recent form was really poor. As I said, I embarrassingly had it triple figures, market 500 to 1, in fact, off the initial raw figures that I had. Obviously, the market said that it wasn't that, and it got beat 1.5 lengths, so it wasn't too bad. It was never going to win. It was just in a bad race. I think it got beaten about 1.5 or something. Look, just poor recent figures, to be honest, and even its best figures weren't up to this field. So I was sort of saying to myself, well, okay, even if it ran towards its best, it's just not going to feature here. Map wasn't all that onerous. It didn't really get penalised heavily there.
I think that's a good check, like what you've kind of said without saying it is. It was a bit unlucky in early in this preparation, and I think it's sort of been overplayed. But if you can sort of go back to its old form, and if its old form or its best form that it's actually shown is not up to today's assignment, it's very hard to be super forgiving. If you're bonusing above its best, that's dangerous.
Yeah, and it's never made age improvement as I would have expected it to. In its first campaign where it ran, you would expect it would be running its best figures. It was trained by Davening Hayes. Then it went to Nathan Doyle, and since it's been to Nathan Doyle, I'm not saying it's any blight on Nathan, I'm just saying the horse itself hasn't made age improvement, and even at its best, it wouldn't have featured in that race for me.
I think it had breathing op when he got it too. Like, it's a horse that he's obviously second-handed, and I agree with you. It's not gone on. Yeah,
look, I know it's been in the market. There's Rose Hill there in 2 midways. It started favourite in both of those as prep, and then it went to a midway at Gosford and got held up a little bit. Still convincingly beaten. There's a bunch of things in there, but ultimately it just comes down to the figures. Weren't good enough. And then he wanted to ask us about a horse at Gosford last Thursday. Did we witness something special, or did he have his Nash coloured glasses on? Look, just looking at overall time, that winner at Gosford, we're talking about, pronounce that, John?
I think Pakari Kari. So it's a Maori name. I think I definitely can't produce it the correct.
Look, sectionally, it's run a very fast. It's run some slick figures in terms of closing sectionals. When you're comparing it to the others on the meeting, it ran third best last 200, fourth best last 400, fourth best last 600, second best last 800. Its last 200 was very good, around about 5 lengths above in terms of standards. But the overall time wasn't flash. And what I'm saying is that whilst this horse obviously has upside and is still lightly raced, it's going to have to do that a lot, isn't it? From where it's come from in the race. It was 5 lengths off him at the 400 or something. So, it's won convincingly. Yes, it can rate better. But as a race only, I'm just talking about, not individual horse, I've only got that pretty much bang on standard, a typical 64. So,
there's a few things to this.
The horse has upside, but it's probably going to be overbet. It's probably going to be overbet next time.
That's the thing, and that's what scares me about the email, because I love the differences of opinions. And I watched the race, and I actually, it says Nash coloured glasses. Just watching Nash from start to finish, the confidence he showed in the horse, the way he just let it drop out 2-3 lengths last. They've obviously gone a little bit quick, which helped. And it's found the right part of the track. It was the day, like we said, with the rail and the true, where you can run on a bit at Gosford. It's still not easy to circle from last and do what this horse did. So it's done, something very, very good. And it's a horse that probably can race a bit closer from a draw. So it's got plenty of upside. And I just love it. I think it's a race worth watching just to watch Nash. I agree. It was just like he looks special at times, and this is one of those times. And the horse helped him. It wasn't a great race, but it's a nice horse on the up.
Yeah, it's a nice horse on the up, and depends where it goes. But I mean, it's everyone's going to see it. It's obvious, right? You don't make money out of what you see in the obvious. You know that, John, from your background. So
yeah, and it's not super flattered, which is the key, right? If it was a bit, I know you can compare it again to political debate. If it had a really poor last section, it was coming on one pace, it's slow. You would just be waiting for this horse to run around wherever it went next start to be hoping to oppose it. Whereas this horse has done enough to be probably neutral at this stage, but wary that it's going to be overplayed.
Yeah, you got to be wary. Okay, let's move on to the next question from Mitchell, or series of questions. What do you both think about the recent news that Racing Queensland will have a 20% POC tax? What impact do you think this will have on Racing Queensland or racing in Queensland and the flow-on effects to the other states? How will this impact your own betting? Do you think that the market percentages should be legislated? Well, that part of it, no, I don't think they should be. In terms of the first part of your question, look, the POC tax obviously is based on where you live, where the bookmakers think you live, based on, I suppose, what you've got set up in your system. It's not so much a tax on Queensland racing, it's a tax on Queensland punters, but a tax on any punter is bad for the industry, and this will affect us all. So we're all going to be looking at the same price. Doesn't matter whether you live in Queensland or Melbourne. You log into your tab account or whoever, TopSport account, you're going to see 3-1, doesn't matter where you are, but obviously the impact or the cost of that's got to be borne by somebody, and it's always going to be the punter that wears the cost, right? So it's long-term bad for the market. They being the administrators, seem to operate with the view that they can forever tax punters. It won't matter if they're the recreational punters taking 7-2 or 5-1 chance. They'll just bet anyway. That's got to end at some stage. There's only so much, juice that you can squeeze out of the lemon. And one of the comments in Mitchell's question is, why do racing authorities seem to be ignoring the fact that turnover has only been up in the last 2 years because of the amount of money that's been pumped into the economy by the government during the pandemic? And how can these continuous prize money increases be sustainable looking at the overall economy moving forward? And that might also be a reason why betting turnover has been up as well, right? Because what have people been doing? They've been at home, they've had all this extra money to deal with, discretionary money that they're not spending, during lockdowns and so forth. And so a lot of that has probably found its way into the wagering space and tainted the figures. But
do you take advantage of that, or do you get jealous and decide to up the taxes and strip it because you're jealous that some of that, all the corporates are taking too much?
I don't think it's jealousy. I think it's insanity.
That's what I mean. It's insanity that they can't. They think they've missed the boat to a certain degree on this period, and it's going to continue. They don't even look into why it's happening. Like Mitchell's made more sense here than anything that I've read from the government ever regarding racing in 5 minutes. But
why they do it beats me. Any tax on punters is a tax on punters, and it's going to be borne by all of us in some way, shape, or form. And that's basically, higher prices, higher percentages, I should say, in the markets. And yeah, we're all going to pay for it. As far as Queensland directly, I don't think it makes a difference. It's just a cash grab, and that's what they're going to continue to do.
They're going to put prize money in. What's that going to do? Anything for turnover?
Well, they're going to redirect a greater proportion, supposedly, back into the industry locally, and that's not a bad thing. But
depends how. But
yeah, no consultation here. It's just fuck the punter. They'll pay for it anyway. They don't care.
That's right.
It's that mindlessness that they think they can get away with this forever and a day. It's eventually going to come home to roost, and we won't know what the effect of that is until we get there.
Well, hopefully it's longer rather than sooner, because it's starting to feel like doomsday. So, I think it's a really relevant question, but it's just a pure snapshot as to how government bodies are currently viewing racing as a bit of a joke. They're treating it like a poker machine rather than something very different.
Indeed. Okay, next question, or a couple of questions from Alex. I've got a question about DF. So I'm assuming you're talking about different form, or you're referring to horses, form lines that are perhaps from out wide or from interstate. I'm assuming that's what you're talking about. In what circumstances do you look for DF in a race? What factors about DF make it so potent in the upcoming race? And how would you know, or how do you know that DF will measure up? Alex, couldn't care less about it. Don't even think about it. People talk about it. I don't know why, to be honest. Everything for me comes down to the numbers, the horse's ratings profile, what it can be expected to achieve, what it's likely to achieve. And a lot of that's obviously art, but there's plenty of science behind it as well in terms of the numbers. Look, I don't even think about different forms. So, John, do you have a comment about that?
Well, every race is different. I don't even think about it because every race is different. Like, I do think about it, but it's not. I might say I want to find a horse out. Like, we just did a review of a meeting. There's races where I want to be negative about horses and going forward, try and. I think they're going to be overplayed wherever they go, and I find races where I think that they might be underplayed. So that's kind of the natural. Is that the question? I don't know. I don't really understand.
Well,
I think every race.
Well, it comes down to the quality of the race, right? So
yes.
Your assessment of that race post race and what you think the form's likely to do going forward, in terms of collateral form, and then the collateral form will show you fairly quickly, assuming that there is collateral form that comes out of that race fairly quickly, whether or not the merit that you've assigned is too high, too low, or about right. So that's what I would say. The second part of his question is about betting. When betting into a race, are you wary or conscious about not backing too many horses who are coming out of the same form race? A few times I've been burnt by backing two horses out of the same race only for a horse coming from another race to nail me. So hypothetically, if you had two similar quality races feeding a new one, are you looking to back horses from each race, or do you just not care and just back what you like regardless of what race they come from? Well, yes, if I've marked two races fairly equally, then it will obviously affect the rating of that race will be about the same if it's right. And what I'm trying to say is this. Let's just say you've got an open handicap and they run X time and Y sectionals. And then you've got a 3-year-old race or a 2-year-old race and they run the same time and similar sectionals. And let's say that the races are positioned fairly close to each other on the day, and let's just assume that the track's not deteriorating too much, and all things being equal, you wouldn't say just because one race is a 2-year-old race and the other race is an open handicap, oh, well, the open handicap has to be far superior because they're mature age horses versus a 2-year-old. You'd have to rate them similar. Now, then what happens, depending on how you treat weight and how you deal with that both pre and post race, that's obviously going to affect different horses differently going into the next race that they can test. And we don't know what they're going to go into until we're faced with it. So you're basically dealing with, yes, you're rating horses post-race based on the race quality, but they're going to be individually treated in the next race that they go into and the contest they line up in. So I don't try to think about that. I don't go, well, this race I think is similar to that one on that day, therefore I only want to back, these two horses out of this race and not that one, or those two horses out of that race and not this one, or one in each. That sort of stuff doesn't even come into my thinking. John?
Yeah, no, I just think I don't ever think about I want to back a horse in this race because it's coming out of that race. There can be good runs in poor races. There can be bad runs in good races. It's just all about the individual merit of that horse. Obviously, the overall merit of the race affects how you treat that horse and those horses in that race when you're looking at them, and then where they go. Like it's all about, like as I said, like a horse can be a tremendous run in a poor race and then go to a race against better horses where it can measure up because it's going to get a better run this time, blah, blah, blah. So to me, it's an interesting question because it's obviously got us thinking about it, but I never I never back a horse simply because of the race that it came out of. I'm treating the horse itself and its merit in that race, and then looking at the next race.
Indeed. Let's talk about TopSport, our sponsor, John. Punters, if you don't have an account, you need to get one. Obviously, with the bigger racing on at the moment, and in any carnival, and even in the off season, you need to make sure you've got a TopSport account as one of the tools in your arsenal. They'll always bet you a fair price, and they'll give you a fair bet. Of course, that is one of the things that they're renowned for. So make sure you get yourself sorted, Punters, if you don't already have one. Next question is from JR. It's sort of like a multi-part question, so we'll deal with it in multi-parts. John and Paul, how long on average do you spend doing the form for a race? I'll go to you, John, first.
Just for this, okay, or by extension a race meeting. So these Saturdays, I probably spend more than average because I tend to go back through. So I'll look at a race. Actually, the way I kind of do it now is I'll quickly look at sort of one of Paul's figures. You compare their previous, just as an overview to see sort of what horses have been standing out in their recent form. Then I'll look at the map, where I think the best sort of position horses are for the race. And then I'll go back over the key horses replays to make sure that I haven't missed anything, recently, or look at their recent form in more detail. So it takes me a bit longer than most, I would imagine. Probably takes me 30 to 40 minutes a race if I'm on a Saturday at Randwick when you've got huge fields. Obviously, field sizes and things like that have huge effect on the amount that a race takes for someone like me. I'm probably a nightmare, but 10 races on a Saturday at Randwick takes me a long time to go through.
Okay, so how many races are you doing a week?
Well, I do sheets and pricing, detailed pricing for the two main races. I had 18 races a week, and then others I handle differently, and they're much quicker to go through. But 18 that I do in detail.
Okay, and I suppose you've got to do that because you are producing a service and you are sort of producing an output that you've got to send to your customers.
Yes.
So yeah, naturally you've got to, I suppose, spend more time setting that up. Look, the answer for me is twofold. My automatics produce about 15,000 races or so a year in Australia. And from those, I'm only interested in core betting myself on the better meeting, so provincial metro. So on those races, I would spend more time doing them. Some races you can look at and it sorts itself very quickly. So I'm really checking what the computer's done manually to ensure that I'm happy with what it's done. And if I think it should be using a different number as a base, for example, then I would go through and make alterations to that. In terms of adjustments for map and adjustments for jockey and all that stuff's taken care of automatically in the process. I don't have to think too much about that. I am very cognizant of how a track might play or how I think it might play based on overall evidence from that track and rail position, with more emphasis on recent activity, and obviously track condition comes into play. So there is a predetermined perception on how the map should play, and then horses are adjusted using a range of different measures around that. So that part of it's automatic. So, but to answer the question, it depends. It could be 10 minutes, it could be 30 minutes, it could be 40 minutes. It just depends on the race. But I'm only doing that, similar to John, I'm only doing that in excruciating detail for, a certain number of iterations each week. It might be 20 to 30 sort of tops at absolute max. You can't really do much more than that in detail. The rest of it is automation, and then your job or your role is more of a business manager, where you're overseeing the automation and you're saying, okay, I'm going to deal with any of the outliers. Something that you might have rated, the computer might have rated too short versus, once it's done its job, you might look at market and go, okay, well, it's marked at this price and the market's that price. Am I still happy with what it's done? So you're looking as a sort of an overview as a business manager, and you're using the tools to help you speed up that process.
Which
I hope
you've spent a lot of time to get
Oh,
it to this.
years.
Yeah.
Years.
Yeah.
It didn't just happen. Yeah.
And I piggyback on that to a certain degree to save me an inordinate amount of time. Otherwise, I couldn't do as many races and meetings as I do. So, yeah.
The next part of his question is: do you identify certain meetings to, from noms or whatever weights acceptances to spend more time on? Yeah, I do. As I said, mainly those metro meetings, mostly East Coast and it really just comes down to I'm more likely to spend more time betting into a jurisdiction that I know I can bet more and turn over more. So that's do I have a formula? Sorry?
I've actually found that the more time I spend on reviewing meetings, the less time I have to spend on setting up meetings, because you get to know the horses far more intimately.
Well, I mean, I do back form on about 50 meetings a week, which basically means I, try to rate the race, not the individual horse. That part of it's automatic, and it's time. It's very taxing. You can't template stuff. It doesn't work that way. Yes, I've got tools.
You can, but you're going to find the same answer as a lot of other people out there, right?
Yeah. It's a far deeper analysis than just trying to use a template. So yes, I do have tools that help me shortcut that process, but it's still pretty much a 5:30 start till 9:30. Let's say it's around about 4 hours a day, 6 days a week. And sometimes it's longer, obviously on days like Tuesday morning where you're getting a lot of, verified times in for the weekends and late in the week, those days could be 6 hours or 7 hours. And then other days will be shorter, but on average, it would work out to be around sort of that 25, 30 hours.
Can I ask how you can get 6 hours where people don't annoy you? Because I'd really like that. Because once the sun comes up, the people come out of the woodwork.
You start early, you put everything on mute, do not disturb, and you sign out of Skype. You don't have any online tools going. You close all your social media stuff. You don't do that, and you just focus on the job and get it done. And coffee does help.
I need to do that.
Yeah, you've got to do it. If you don't, a mate of mine runs a legal firm, and he calls it power hours, and that's essentially I've taken a leaf out of his book and said, right, during this time, this is all booked off in my calendar. So I just don't. And look, sometimes it's hard because you've still got to deal with things that crop up from time to time that are emergency. Anyway, the next part of his question is, oh no, I think we've done it.
That's it. Now we're on to
we're on to question of the week from TopSport, of course, or TopSport question of the week. It's actually from Sean. Good on you, Sean. He goes, when you're working off rated prices, what edge do you guys like to have to bet? I assume each race will be different, just as a general rule of thumb. And is it a probability percentage, i.e. 5% edge required for a horse rated $2? It's $2.22, 50% versus 45% probability. And how is that edge calculated off your rated price? Bang on. You've got it exactly right. It's not 5%. It could be 3%. It could be 2%. It could be 6%, depending on the type of race that I'm looking at and the premium that I demand. And it depends on the individual horse. But assuming that my estimates of the horse's chance and other key runners in my market don't have too many queries or holes, or could be this, could be that type of scenario, and I'm pretty happy with the market, then yeah, generally, depending on the map, then, and I don't just mean the map of where the horse is going to be, but map versus expected pattern and actual pattern. So if I see what I expected to be translating in the results that I'm seeing during a meeting, that gives me more confidence. And so in those scenarios, my premium that I demand would be less. Yeah, it might be as low as 3%. So, you're 3% on a $10 chance. If you rated something $10, then you demand a much higher price than what it would be if it was $2. I mean, it's just people have got to understand that. So yes, that does apply. He says, if you really wanted to divulge, is it the same for lay betting? No, it's not. That's a different game altogether, and I don't really want to go into that. but it's a different percentage. Don't cover your face up, John.
No, I actually wanted to hear your answer to that, and I'll probably quiz you on that when you're drunk sometime, and I can drag it out of you. But
that doesn't happen often much anymore.
No, I know you're retired, but that's all right. Maybe we'll have to get you a happy one. I'll get the happy gas into you. Oh, yeah, I think it's a good question, and I can't really improve much on what you said. Like, the more information you have, and the more confidence you have in everything in the race, map, setups of horses, queries in the race, no first starters, none of this, the less you've got to demand, the more. And I also I demand more about horses that are, going to have to do more. So horses that map poorly, I want a bigger edge out of those than horses that are going to be in, strong challenging positions. Ideally,
you might have two horses at 2-1.
Yeah,
2-1. One on a track that you're expecting it to be on pace, and your horse either is likely leader or OSL or box seed or whatever it might be, and so you say to yourself, okay, well, I'm happy with the map. On my 2-1 chance, I'm happy with the assumptions I've made about this runner. I could actually potentially have this runner shorter based on a different number, and I can get 3-1. Well, that's a really good bet. But you've got another horse 2-1. It's in a race where there's not a lot of tempo. It's likely to have to go back. It might be in a sticky position against any perceived pattern, but because it's so dominant in its numbers, it's 2-1. That sort of horse you'd want, in my mind, much better than 3-1.
Yeah. Whatever that number is, it's got to be bigger.
To have the same level of bet.
Yes.
That's the way I play it anyway. I mean, each to their own.
I agree. And I send out prices early with that sort of thing, like a number and then a number to take. And I'm obviously demanding even more then, because I'm sending it out 4 hours prior to the race. So, it's very difficult to be super confident and tighten those numbers up without knowing patterns and whatever's going to happen.
Let's just put a hypothetical in place. Let's assume that you could bet on a Wednesday afternoon for Saturday racing, and let's assume that you could get on to win whatever you wanted to win. And let's just assume that the bookmakers didn't make silly mistakes, like the market at say 11 a.m. midday, or even 20 minutes before the race. Let's just assume that these are the prices.
That's the market on a Wednesday. Yep.
Yeah, that's the market on a Wednesday. You'd be foolish to have the same type of bet on Wednesday as you would Saturday, because the information that you can gain by looking at the races on the day and ascertaining pattern and making value judgments about that and other factors is huge. Yeah,
and we're not talking about the outlier of them putting up $20 about a first starter you've been waiting for.
No, we're not talking about that. We're talking about the main.
Assuming they're fairly good, yeah.
So there is a premium to be had. There is a premium that you might get in terms of price on Wednesday for a horse, and look, plenty of people. Assume premium, but plenty of people, I've got a mate of mine who does very well out of doing that sort of thing, and sometimes they obviously go against you, but if you can get on, then and your setup is such that you can have your form sort of ready by the time that the markets go up, then you can profit if you're able to get on, or you've got avenues to get on. But
especially but there's different ways, isn't there? Like, you might be getting on to get off, like you might be getting on knowing that it's going to firm because the price is wrong and you've got no intention of holding that bet or whatever. But like you say, it's just so hard to get on or whatever. And in isolation, I agree with you that any premium is nullified by maximum information.
Yeah, indeed. Okay, we've waffled on long enough. Thanks for all your questions, punters.
Good questions.
Indeed. What have we got this week, John? I don't even know if there's going to be a show.
I've got no idea. I miss Jason. I haven't spoken to him for a week and a half. We've got to find something to talk about.
We'll see what we can rustle up. But thanks, punters. Thanks for your tuning in and giving us your time. Hopefully you can get some gold out of this going forward. And we look forward to the next show.
Thanks, guys.
See ya.